For centuries, empires have risen and empires have fallen. But sometimes, when an empire collapses, the world it leaves behind does not disappear. Instead, it becomes the center of a new struggle. In 1918, one of the greatest empires in history came to an end, the Ottoman Empire, which had ruled vast territories across 3 continents for more than 600 years, finally collapsed after the First World War. What followed was not just the end of an empire, it was the beginning of a new geopolitical era. Borders were redrawn, alliances were formed, new nations emerged. But the question remains, were these changes simply the natural course of history or the result of powerful strategies designed to shape the future of an entire region? For more than a century, the Middle East has remained at the center of global politics. Empires have competed, superpowers have intervened, and the map of the region has continued to evolve. This is the story of how a single region became one of the most strategically important places on Earth. This is the story of power, influence, and the battle to control the crossroads of the world. Before the modern Middle East existed, one empire dominated the region, the Ottoman Empire. Founded at the end of the 13th century, the Ottomans slowly expanded their territory through military strength, strategic alliances, and effective administration. By the 16th century, the empire had grown into one of the most powerful states in the world. Its territory stretched from southeast Europe to North Africa, and from the Arabian Peninsula deep into Western Asia. At its heart stood the magnificent city of Constantinople, today known as Istanbul. This city was not only the capital of the empire, but also a bridge between continents, cultures, and civilizations. Under Ottoman rule, the Middle East remained politically unified for centuries. Trade routes connected Asia, Europe, and Africa. Cities flourished, markets thrived. Despite internal challenges, the empire maintained control over this vast region for more than 600 years. But by the 19th century, the empire began to weaken. Economic pressures increased, nationalist movements emerged within its territories, and European powers started to expand their influence. What was once a powerful empire slowly began to decline. And as the 20th century approached, the world was heading toward a conflict that would change everything. The First World War erupted in 1914, involving many of the world's most powerful nations. The Ottoman Empire entered the war alongside Germany and the Central Powers. For several years, brutal battles were fought across Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. But by 1918, the war had taken a heavy toll. The Central Powers were defeated, and with that defeat, the Ottoman Empire collapsed. The territories that had once been ruled by the Ottomans were suddenly left without a central authority. For centuries, the region had existed under one empire. Now it faced an uncertain future. European powers quickly stepped in to shape what would come next. The question was no longer whether the empire would survive. The question had become, who would control the lands it left behind? With the Ottoman Empire gone, the political map of the Middle East was about to change dramatically. European powers, particularly Britain and France, began planning how to divide the region. Through diplomatic agreements and negotiations, new borders were drawn across territories that had previously been part of a single empire. New nations began to appear on the map. Countries such as Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and Jordan emerged from territories that had once been under Ottoman rule. However, these borders were not always drawn based on cultural, ethnic, or historical realities. In many cases, they reflected the strategic interests of global powers. As a result, the Middle East entered a new political era,
one shaped not only by regional dynamics but also by international influence. The decisions made during this period would shape the region for generations. But another major global conflict was already on the horizon, and it would once again reshape the balance of power. The Second World War, which began in 1939, transformed the global political landscape. European empires that had once dominated large parts of the world were weakened by years of conflict. By the end of the war in 1945, the international balance of power had changed dramatically. Two major superpowers emerged on the global stage: the United States and the Soviet Union. At the same time, significant political changes were taking place in the Middle East. One of the most important developments occurred in 1948 when the modern state of Israel was established. This event introduced a new and complex dynamic into the region. Political alliances began to shift, regional tensions increased, and the Middle East became an area of growing strategic importance in the emerging global order. As the world entered the Cold War, the region would soon become part of a much larger geopolitical rivalry. Following World War II, the world became divided into two major political and military blocs. On one side stood the United States and its allies. On the other side stood the Soviet Union and its sphere of influence. This period, known as the Cold War, lasted for more than 4 decades. Although the two superpowers rarely fought each other directly, they competed for influence around the world. The Middle East became one of the key arenas in this global rivalry. Both superpowers sought alliances, strategic partnerships, and regional influence. Military bases were established, political alliances were formed, and several regional conflicts became closely connected to the broader Cold War competition. Throughout this period, the Middle East remained a critical geopolitical crossroads. Its location, its resources, and its strategic importance made it central to global power politics. But the Cold War would eventually come to an end, and once again, the balance of power would change.
In 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed. This marked the end of the Cold War and the beginning of a new global era. For a time, the United States emerged as the world's most dominant power. The Middle East continued to play a central role in global politics. Conflicts, alliances, and international interventions shaped the region throughout the late 20th and early 21st centuries. At the same time, new global players began to increase their involvement. Countries such as Russia and China expanded their political, economic, and strategic interests in the region. Energy resources, trade routes, and geopolitical positioning continued to make the Middle East one of the most strategically important areas in the world. But as global power dynamics continued to evolve, the region faced new challenges and uncertainties. Today, the Middle East stands at the intersection of history and geopolitics. Modern cities rise across desert landscapes. Advanced technologies reshape economies. Yet beneath this modern transformation lies a complex political environment shaped by more than 100 years of historical developments. Regional powers pursue their interests. Global powers maintain strategic relationships and alliances, and the region continues to hold immense importance due to its geography, energy resources, and historical significance. The decisions made in the past continue to influence the present, and the future of the region remains closely connected to the broader dynamics of global politics. More than 100 years have passed since the fall of the Ottoman Empire. During that time, the Middle East has witnessed wars, alliances, revolutions, and political transformations.
Borders have been drawn, power structures have changed, and the global balance of influence has continued to evolve. Yet one thing remains clear. The Middle East continues to stand at the center of global attention. Its history is deeply connected to the history of the modern world, and its future will likely play a significant role in shaping the decades ahead. As new powers rise and global dynamics continue to shift, the map of the region may continue to evolve. Because history has shown us something important. Maps may appear stable, but in regions where power, resources, and strategy intersect, the story is rarely finished, and the map may never truly be final.